Ladies and gentlemen, before you ever see $1 million in your bank account, you have to become the kind of person who thinks like someone who already has it. We don't become wealthy by accident. We become wealthy by retraining the mind and hardwiring new internal systems that dictate how we think, act, and decide. This isn't about just believing in wealth. It's about biologically and psychologically preparing your brain to operate like a millionaire long before the money arrives. The most important shift you can make in your life before any financial success ever arrives is learning how to regulate your internal state, be it your physiology, your emotions, your mindset. The truth is, the world doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are under pressure. And if you can't control your state, your circumstances will always control you. People spend so much time trying to fix their outer world. They chase the next strategy, the next hack, the next opportunity. But the truth is, those things are only as good as the person behind them. If your nervous system is constantly in fight or flight mode, you will sabotage good opportunities. You'll rush decisions. You'll misread people. You'll overcommit, underdeliver, and then feel like life is working against you. It's not life. It's not bad luck. It's dysregulation. And you can rewire that. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly scanning your environment to keep you safe. But if it has learned that the world is dangerous or that you must always be on high alert, it will make decisions from a place of survival. You can't build long-term wealth or long-term vision when you're in survival mode. That's not where patience, clarity, or discipline live. Those qualities live in the executive part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, but that region shuts down when your body is flooded with stress hormones. So the first step to thinking like a millionaire is to stop living like a prisoner of your nervous system. Millionaires, high performers, and grounded leaders all have one thing in common. They don't let external chaos dictate their internal state. They've trained their biology. They've trained their breath. They've trained their self-talk. That training is available to you starting now. One of the simplest, most powerful tools for this is deliberate breath work. When your heart starts racing, when panic creeps in, when your thoughts become scattered, the breath is your anchor. A slow inhale through the nose, followed by an even slower exhale through the mouth, sends a signal to your brain. You're safe. When you practice this regularly, not just when things go wrong, you increase something called your vagal tone. That's the biological capacity to calm yourself down quickly and recover from stress. High vagal tone is common in emotionally regulated, high-performing individuals. It means you can experience stress without becoming it. Controlling your state also means mastering your focus, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Most people don't lose because they're incapable. They lose because they're distracted. If you want to think like a millionaire, you must start acting like your attention is worth money. Because it is. Every time you let anxiety hijack your mind, every time you pick up your phone without intention, you're teaching your brain to live in reaction rather than response. And this is where routine becomes a powerful ally. You don't rise to the level of your potential. You fall to the level of your training. What do you do when no one is watching? What do you do when nothing is going your way? If you're waiting for the right mood to show up productive, you've already lost. Millionaire minds don't rely on mood. They rely on rhythm. They train daily non-negotiables, wake times, learning windows, physical movement, stillness, practices. These routines aren't just about productivity. They're about predictability. The brain craves patterns. Create healthy patterns and your mind becomes a calm, efficient machine. Break your patterns and you become scattered, inconsistent, and reactive. There's also a deeper truth here. You don't earn peace after success. You bring peace to the process, and that's what creates success. People think, once I make money, I'll feel safe. But money doesn't regulate your nervous system. Only you can do that. If you haven't built inner safety, even wealth will feel threatening. You'll live in fear of losing it. You'll overwork to keep it. You'll self-destruct under the pressure of maintaining an identity that wasn't built on solid ground. So the challenge is this: start building from the inside out. Before you earn the external, build the internal. Before you make the money, build the mind that can hold it, manage it, multiply it. This starts with training your state, daily morning routines, breath work, cold exposure, time in nature, journaling, solitude. Whatever practices help you slow the mind and return to your body, lean into them. You don't need to do all of them, but you need to do something consistently because your outer world will always reflect your inner stability. You attract and sustain wealth in proportion to your ability to stay calm and clear under pressure. The storm will come. Business will fluctuate. Life will test you. But the person who can stand still inside the storm, that's the person who builds lasting success. But mastering your internal state is not optional. It's the foundation. If you want to think like a millionaire before you become one, then learn to control what's within you so that nothing outside you can own you. In a world designed for instant gratification, the ability to delay pleasure is one of the most powerful mental tools you can develop. It's not just a habit. It's a form of psychological strength that rewires your brain for long-term success. If you want to think like a millionaire before you become one, you must train your mind to prioritize the future over the fleeting comfort of now. This is not a feel-good concept. It's a biological process that shapes how your brain perceives value, time, and reward. Most people live in a short-term loop. They wake up, scroll, consume, react, and repeat. Their brain becomes addicted to small dopamine hits, a like on a post, a sugary snack, a comfort purchase. The problem with this pattern is that it trains the nervous system to crave ease and avoid effort. And if you're always seeking comfort, you'll never build anything significant because everything worth building requires discomfort, patience, and sacrifice. The science behind this is clear. Dopamine, the chemical that drives motivation, reward, and drive, is highly sensitive to how you train it. If your brain gets used to immediate gratification, the baseline level of dopamine decreases. That means you'll need more stimulation to feel the same reward. Over time, things like reading, working on a business, saving money, or staying focused will feel boring. Your brain will reject the slow grind because it's been conditioned to chase the quick win. This is why so many people struggle to build long-term success. It's not because they lack intelligence or talent. It's because they've trained their brain to expect payoff too soon. Millionaire thinkers do the opposite. They train their minds to attach pleasure not to the reward itself, but to the process of working toward the reward. They feel satisfaction in the consistency, not just the outcome. That mental flip is what allows them to persist when others quit. Delaying pleasure isn't about suffering. It's about understanding value through time. The longer you're willing to wait for a meaningful return, the higher the reward typically is. Whether it's investing in a business, building a skill, or creating financial stability, success favors those who can postpone gratification in favor of something bigger. You need to get to a place where it feels normal to say no to something fun today because you've already said yes to something greater tomorrow. Long-term vision requires emotional maturity. It means making decisions that might not feel good in the moment, but that align with your bigger purpose. For example, skipping a night out to work on your craft, or putting money into investments instead of spending it on trends. These are not sacrifices in the traditional sense. They are investments in identity. Every time you delay short-term pleasure, you reinforce to yourself, I'm someone who creates, not consumes. I'm someone who builds, not borrows. This shift is supported by neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change itself through repeated patterns. The more you choose long-term over short-term, the more natural it becomes. What felt hard at first starts to feel empowering. You begin to develop pride in your discipline, and that pride becomes a source of intrinsic motivation. Millionaire thinkers use this to their advantage. They install long-term thinking through habit, routine, and daily discipline until it becomes second nature. Another key insight is understanding the power of compound effort. The same way compound interest works in finance, consistent effort builds exponential results in mindset and skill. Small actions repeated over time don't add up, they multiply. But most people never stick with something long enough to see the compound effect. They quit at 40%, switch lanes at 60%, and never realize they were 90% of the way there. The millionaire mind keeps going. Not because it's easy, but because it sees the big picture. To develop this mindset, start by practicing micro delays. Say no to the unnecessary coffee purchase. Delay watching the show until after your work is done. Save 10% of every dollar that comes in. These small shifts build the muscle of delayed gratification. And as that muscle grows, you'll find it easier to make bigger sacrifices because your identity is no longer tied to impulse. It's tied to purpose. Vision is your anchor in moments of temptation. When you know where you're going and you've made that destination clear, decisions become simpler, not easier, but simpler. When you have a strong vision, you stop asking, do I feel like doing this right now? And start asking, does this move me closer to the future I want? That one question can save you years of distraction. Delayed pleasure is not about living a restricted life. It's about choosing fulfillment over fleeting excitement. It's about training your brain to chase meaning, not just dopamine. And it's about building the type of mind that doesn't panic when things take time because it understands real success is slow. That's what makes it real. If you can develop the discipline to delay what feels good now in service of what matters most later, you are already thinking like a millionaire. Because the difference between a dreamer and a builder is this. The dreamer wants it fast. The builder is willing to wait because they know they're becoming the person who deserves it. Most people chase goals. They write them down, repeat them in the mirror, visualize them before bed. And while goals can provide motivation, they're not enough because a goal is a moment, a destination. But success is not a moment. It's a process, a system, a rhythm that repeats day after day. If you want to think like a millionaire before you become one, you must shift from goal setting to system building. A goal says, I want to lose 20 pounds. A system says, I train at 7 a.m., 5 days a week, prep meals on Sunday, and track my macros daily. A goal says, I want to make $1 million. A system says, I study my market 1 hour a day, launch one product a quarter, and optimize my sales funnel weekly. Systems are what remain when motivation fades. They are the backbone of performance. Goals are useful for direction, but systems are essential for progress. If you have a goal without a system, you are relying on willpower. And willpower is a finite resource. The brain fatigues under stress, distractions, and emotional noise. But systems automate your identity. They remove the decision-making burden. You no longer need to ask, should I work today? You simply follow the system. When you build a system, you're creating a routine that keeps you aligned even when your mood shifts. Because your mood will shift. There will be days when you don't feel like working, learning, or showing up. Millionaire thinkers anticipate that. They don't depend on mood. They engineer systems that function with or without it. There's neuroscience behind this. The brain craves efficiency and predictability. It seeks out patterns so it can reduce cognitive load. When you build a system, whether it's for finances, learning, fitness, or focus, you're giving your brain a pattern to follow. The more consistent the pattern, the stronger the neural wiring becomes. Eventually, the behavior becomes automatic. That's how habits are formed, not by force, but by repetition within structure. Think about the most successful people you admire. They don't just have ambition, they have architecture. They don't just dream, they design. Their mornings are scripted. Their calendars are protected. Their energy is allocated with intention. That's not rigidity, it's freedom. Because when your life is supported by systems, you gain control over your time, your attention, and your results. There's also a psychological benefit to systems. They reduce emotional interference. When you have a clear system in place, you don't waste energy debating whether something is working. You simply execute, measure, and refine. Emotions no longer dictate your consistency. Feedback does. You move from reactive to responsive. That shift alone separates average performers from elite performers. Building systems requires clarity. You need to ask better questions than just, what do I want? Instead, ask, what actions would make this goal inevitable? What daily behaviors would create momentum regardless of motivation? What can I automate, schedule, or delegate to remove friction? For example, instead of setting a goal like read more books, build a reading system, 20 pages every morning before phone use. Or instead of a vague goal like build wealth, create a financial system, track income expenses weekly, invest a fixed percentage automatically, review your net worth monthly. The key is to tie behaviors to cues in your environment. Use triggers like time, location, or prior actions to prompt the system. After brushing your teeth, you meditate. After lunch, you study. Before bed, you journal. The cue initiates the routine, and the routine reinforces the identity. Systems are also scalable. When life gets busy, you can shrink the system instead of breaking it. Can't do a 60-minute workout? Do 20 minutes. Can't write 1,000 words? Write 300. Consistency matters more than volume. A maintained system keeps your mind engaged with the identity you're building. When you break the system entirely, you start to doubt yourself. That's how people lose momentum, not from failure, but from inconsistency. Systems are not just for work. They're for energy. How you eat, sleep, and recover all impact your thinking. So millionaire minds don't just manage tasks. They manage energy. That's why they protect their mornings, guard their inputs, and say no often. Their system isn't just about doing more. It's about removing the unnecessary so they can do what matters. And most importantly, systems create a feedback loop. You see what's working. You see where you're off track. You adjust. Goals feel like success or failure. Systems give you real-time course correction. They teach you to think in terms of processes, not outcomes. You stop asking, did I win? And start asking, am I getting better at this system? This is how wealth, health, and mastery are built, not through intensity, but through sustained consistency. If you're willing to build a system before the success arrives, you're already operating at the level that success requires. Millionaires don't rise to the top because they hit a lucky goal. They rise because they've trained their systems to keep them focused, disciplined, and in momentum, no matter what life throws at them. Start thinking that way now, and the results will follow. Working hard is important, but it's not enough. If hard work alone created wealth, every exhausted person would be rich. The truth is, wealth doesn't come just from effort. It comes from leverage. Leverage is the force multiplier. It's how 1 hour of work can produce 10 times the results. It's how one decision can create ongoing returns for years. If you want to think like a millionaire before you become one, you have to shift your mindset from valuing labor to seeking leverage in every part of your life. Labor is linear. You work 1 hour. You get paid for 1 hour. But leverage is exponential. It decouples your time from your income, from your impact, and from your results. Millionaire thinkers don't ask, how can I work more hours? They ask, how can I build something once that works for me repeatedly? That shift in thinking changes the entire game. There are different types of leverage. One of the most powerful is technological leverage, using tools, software, systems, and automation to scale your impact. A YouTube video, a digital product, an email sequence, a website, all of these can work while you sleep. They don't get tired. They don't call in sick. They don't need motivation. And once they're built, they become assets, something that continues to serve, teach, sell, or influence long after the initial work is. Then there's people leverage, building teams, partnerships, and networks that multiply what you can do alone. You can only go so far on your own. Millionaires understand that time is a non-renewable resource, and eventually the most valuable skill you can have is knowing how to delegate effectively, not just to dump tasks, but to empower the right people to do their best work in the right places. This creates freedom, not just financially, but mentally. It lets you focus your brain power on high-value decisions rather than low-value distractions. Another critical form of leverage is content leverage. Words, ideas, and insights can scale when packaged correctly. One well-written tweet, blog post, or podcast can reach millions. It doesn't matter if you're not an influencer. The principle is the same. Package your knowledge in a way that can be shared, consumed, and applied by others without you needing to be present. The more ideas you can broadcast efficiently, the more value you can generate without increasing your effort. Millionaire thinkers are constantly scanning their life for leverage opportunities. They ask themselves, what am I doing that could be automated? What task am I repeating that could be outsourced? What skill do I have that could be turned into a scalable product? They are obsessed with reducing friction, eliminating redundancy, and building systems that remove them from the center of the equation. It doesn't mean they don't work hard. They absolutely do. But the work is different. It's not just about pushing, they're architecting. They're building machines that work beyond them. A regular worker builds something and gets paid once. A leverage-minded person builds something and gets paid again and again. It could be intellectual property, a course, a brand, an audience, a code base. These are all leverage points that outlive the original input. Leverage also requires strategic patience. Building systems and assets that scale takes longer than doing something manually. But once it's built, the return curve kicks in. You might make nothing for months, then suddenly it snowballs. Most people never get there because they're addicted to immediate results. They stay trapped in labor because it pays fast, even if it pays small. The millionaire mind plays the long game. It delays payoff for scale. To think in leverage, you have to value output over effort. Society rewards effort publicly, but wealth rewards results privately. It doesn't matter how many hours you worked. It matters what that work produced. If you can learn how to produce more value with less effort, you're already operating in a leveraged way. This shift also changes how you measure progress. You stop asking, how busy am I? And start asking, how scalable is what? Your subconscious doesn't respond to logic. It responds to frequency. The more often you feed it a new story, the more it begins to accept it as reality. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change its structure and function based on experience, makes this possible. Every time you choose a new thought, you're carving a new neural pathway. With enough repetition, that pathway becomes the default. Your inner narrative also affects how you perceive opportunity. If your story says, "I'm not the kind of person who succeeds," you'll unconsciously ignore or avoid chances that could move you forward. You might undercharge for your services, stay silent in meetings, or avoid taking risks because your story says, "Don't stand out. It's not safe." But when you rewire that narrative, the entire landscape changes. You begin to see doors where there used to be walls. Another part of this rewiring process is emotional regulation. Because it's easy to speak powerfully to yourself when things are going well. But how do you speak to yourself when you're tired, afraid, or defeated? That's when the old stories tend to resurface. That's when your brain wants to return to the familiar, even if the familiar is toxic. The solution is to install stable emotional language, statements you can fall back on in moments of doubt. Things like, "This is feedback, not failure. I've been here before and I found my way through. Oh, this moment doesn't define me. My actions do." You also need to be selective about the external narratives you consume. Every book you read, every voice you listen to, every conversation you engage in, those are all inputs. And over time, they become internal echoes. If you surround yourself with negativity, scarcity, and fear, those things will find their way into your narrative. But if you immerse yourself in stories of growth, resilience, and possibility, your internal voice will start to reflect that tone. Another powerful method is to document your evolution, track your wins, reflect on how far you've come. Write down the limiting beliefs you've overcome. This creates a factual counter-narrative. Your brain needs evidence to update its assumptions, and your progress, no matter how small, is that evidence. Review it regularly. Let it become a reminder that you're not the same person you were 6 months ago. You're growing, adapting, and becoming someone. It's important to remember, your inner narrative is not set in stone. It's just a habit of thought. And like any habit, it can be broken, replaced, and reinstalled with intention. Millionaire minds are not free of doubt, but they are trained to speak powerfully to themselves, especially when things feel uncertain. They've built an inner world that supports risk, confidence, and forward movement, even when the external world is unpredictable. If you want to build wealth, impact, or freedom, you have to build a mind that can hold it. That starts by telling yourself the truth, not the fearful truth you inherited, but the higher truth you are capable of choosing. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your old programming. You are what you repeatedly tell yourself you are becoming. Rewire the narrative. Make it deliberate. Make it empowering. Make it consistent. And soon you won't just think like a millionaire. You'll act, decide, and create like one. Every day you make decisions that either move you closer to your future or further from it. Most people make these decisions based on how they feel in the moment. Tired, unmotivated, afraid, frustrated. They react to emotion instead of responding from clarity. But if you want to think like a millionaire before you become one, you must begin making decisions from identity, not emotion. Your emotions are real, but they are not always reliable. They shift with sleep, hunger, stress, and environment. They're chemical signals, not always rooted in truth. When your decisions are dictated by temporary feelings, your path becomes inconsistent. You might work hard one day and give up the next. You may say yes when you should say no, or stay quiet when you should speak up, all because emotion clouded your judgment. On the other hand, identity is stable. It's who you believe you are at your core. And when your identity is aligned with your goals, you no longer rely on motivation. You rely on consistency. Millionaire thinkers don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? They ask, what would the version of me that already has the result do right now? Oh, that shift changes everything. Making decisions from identity is about stepping into your future self before the evidence shows up. It's not fake, it's alignment. If you wait until you feel confident, ready, or inspired, you'll rarely take action. But if you begin acting from the identity of someone who is confident, ready, and intentional, the emotion catches up later. The action creates the feeling, not the other way around. Think of it this way. Emotions are passengers in the car. Identity is the drive. Emotions can speak, but they don't get to steer. They can offer information, but not direction. When you start allowing identity to guide your choices, you create a level of self-trust that emotions alone can never deliver. This doesn't mean you ignore emotion completely. Emotion has value. It helps you feel alive, process experience, and stay connected to others. But you learn to interpret it instead of obeying it. You acknowledge fear, but you don't bow to it. You recognize fatigue, but you stay consistent anyway. You notice doubt, but you choose courage over certainty. This is how emotionally intelligent people operate. They feel everything, but they are not ruled by anything. To start making decisions from identity, you must first define that identity. Who are you becoming? What does that person do daily? How do they speak, think, respond, and act when things get hard? What do they say no to? What do they prioritize? The more detailed your internal image is, the easier it becomes to make aligned choices. This is where visualization becomes a tool, not for fantasy, but for focus. When you visualize your future self, not just having success, but living it, managing it, sustaining it, growing through it, you give your brain a reference point. Your nervous system begins to normalize that identity. The decisions you make start to align with that vision, and the gap between who you are and who you're becoming starts to close. When emotions rise, and they will pause and ask yourself, is this decision being made from who I am becoming or from how I feel right now? That one question can prevent 1,000 missteps. It can keep you from self-sabotaging, from procrastinating, from shrinking in moments that require expansion. Identity-based decisions are also more resilient. Though a decision is rooted in emotion, it can easily be reversed the next time the emotion changes. But when a decision is rooted in identity, it becomes part of your internal code. It holds under pressure. It stands through setbacks. It doesn't need to be constantly renegotiated. It simply is. This mindset also applies to how you treat your goals. If your goal is to build wealth, but your identity is still shaped by scarcity, you'll subconsciously resist success. You'll make small moves, avoid risks, and undercut your own value because the goal and the identity are in conflict. But when your identity shifts to that of a builder, a creator, a leader, your actions begin to match your outcomes. Over time, this becomes your default. You don't need to force it because it's who you are now. You're no longer trying to act like a millionaire. You are one internally. The money hasn't arrived yet, but the mindset has, and that mindset will produce the results in due time. One of the biggest shifts you can make is to detach your identity from your current circumstances. Just because your bank account isn't where you want it to be doesn't mean your mind has to reflect that. Just because you failed in the past doesn't mean you are a failure. What matters is what you're rehearsing mentally every day. What identity are you rehearsing when no one is watching? Identity is self-reinforcing. When you act like the person you want to become, even in small ways, you begin to become that person. It's not about being perfect. It's about choosing alignment over impulse again and again. It's about reminding yourself, I don't rise to the level of my feelings. I rise to the level of my identity. You will still have hard days. Emotions will still fluctuate, but identity is your anchor. When you make decisions from identity, your life stops being a reaction, becomes a creation. That's the mindset that builds wealth. That's the mindset that sustains success. And that's the mindset that turns vision into reality. You don't become a millionaire by accident. You become one by design, starting in the mind. Long before it shows up in your bank account, the way you think, the systems you build, the discipline you develop, and the identity you choose every single day, that is the foundation of lasting success. Most people wait for the money before they change the mind. But the truth is, the money only stays when the mindset is already prepared to manage it. Millionaire thinking is not about chasing wealth. It's about becoming the type of person who naturally attracts it, sustains it, and multiplies it because they've done the inner work first. So if you're serious about leveling up, don't start with the numbers. Start with the narrative. Control your state. Delay gratification. Build daily systems. Obsess over leverage. Rewire the story you tell yourself. And above all, make your decisions from identity. Think like a millionaire now, and the results will follow. Because wealth doesn't begin in your wallet. It begins in your mind.